Hello, and welcome to the Sovereign Collective podcast, where we bring you real, raw truth for your self-empowerment. I'm your host, Sasha Calavoda, and I believe that you can stand on your own 2 feet, but that you don't have to do it alone. I love learning from people who continually strive to raise the bar, to go against mainstream thinking, and who dare to question the general consensus. People who risk being ridiculed or even risk the loss of their professional status as they bravely question the common narratives and challenge the rest of us to expand our minds and to reconsider what we think we already know. Join me in learning how to take control of your health and your mind so that you can have the energy to think more clearly and the confidence to step up and take responsibility for all aspects of your life. We promise to never censor here because I believe you are strong enough to hear the real, raw truth to make up your own mind. If you like what you find here at the Sovereign Collective podcast, then please share with your friends and family. I so appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. And now, on to the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Sovereign Collective podcast. Today, it's going to be a duo interview with Tim and I, and we are pleased to be sitting today with Rick Kohut, a man of many talents and many messages, I think, to bring to the people. And I wanted to get this interview done now because he's actually hosting an important conference at the end of the month here in Alberta. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But Rick, I had the pleasure to meet him, I don't even know now, maybe it's almost about a year ago or so. We both, because he is the owner of a health food store in Olds, Alberta. And I'm at a shop a few days a week and we were at a training. And I definitely wasn't there for the training. I can tell you that right now. I remember exactly which one it was. I was not there for that. I can tell you it was not something that I really needed to be at, but I was there sitting at the table with Rick and we got to talking and it was a really great conversation. I got to learn that he was a farmer and a health food store owner and a bringer of the knowledge of German new medicine. And so all these really great things that I am absolutely interested in. So it's a pleasure to meet him there. And since then, I've interviewed his sister, Tanya Verkwin, on German new medicine topics twice. And we are scheduled to do another one next month, actually. So that's been great. So yeah, so it was really great to meet Rick then. And since then, I've also got to visit his farm and to see what he's doing there and to enjoy a delicious meal put on by your family and all sorts of amazing greens. That was a really lovely visit as well. So thank you, Rick, for joining us today. I look forward to this conversation.
Yeah, likewise. I really appreciate you and what you're doing. And I think it was quite serendipitous that we were sitting together at that table and we got to chat about things. And certainly, of course, G&M comes up because that's natural. And anybody who's acting in their nature will talk about nature. So it was great.
Right. Absolutely.
Sasha talked about nature in an earlier meeting that we had.
Yep.
The cat pee.
Oh, talked about marking conflicts with the cat. Yeah. Just earlier today. Exactly. Yeah. But so just so you know, Rick is a farmer. He's got a health food store. He does, I think you do the biofeedback as well, right? You do German new medicine education. Like there's a lot involved. So I look really forward to seeing how that all works together in your world and how you bring it forth from your perspective. And also he's bringing us the conference, the Basic Human Needs Conference at the last Friday of the month, the 28th of March. I'm going to plug that right now, and then we're going to talk about it more a little bit later. But if you are interested in that, we're going to have the link below in the notes. And if you want to get a discount on that, Atlassian30 is your code ATLASSIAN 30 to save $30 on that. It's going to be a full day of education, I think, rubbing shoulders with some great people who are looking to take control of their lives. And this is going to be a great informative day to help you do just that. So, Rick, before we get into all this stuff, how did you start? Like, where did you come from? Were you always into farming? Did your farming evolve into the type of farming you do now? Like, how did you get to be doing what you're doing today? Let's start there.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's quite a bit to unpack, but a bit of a story. I guess I grew up on a farm, sort of a conventional farm, mixed farm. We had all sorts of different animals and grew all sorts of different crops, and my parents were just into it. They had dairy cows, they had chickens, they had turkeys, peacocks, pheasants, ostriches, bison, they were very out there. They were entrepreneurs and doing all sorts of fun things, and they had land and they grew crops and they kind of just followed the path. That led them to, into conventional farming. So when chemicals started coming out, well, that was the new thing. So that's sort of what everybody did. And, I just thought as a young boy growing up that that's what agriculture was and that's what it entailed. So I enjoyed farming. I actually, after school, I went to Australia and farmed there for a year. And after that, I went to an agricultural college back here in Alberta and decided to just, go deeper into farming. I got a degree in agricultural economics, and then I was basically headhunted in university to come and work in the chemical and fertilizer industry. And I thought, well, by golly, that's great. This is agriculture. And so, I worked in the chemical and fertilizer industry for over a decade, selling chemicals and fertilizers from the big companies that, the freedom community tends to, look down upon. And, I look at it as an excellent experience. It gave me a perspective that now I can look back on and really truly appreciate, the way the pendulum swings, in agriculture. And when you feel like, that's what agriculture is, well, you go both feet in and you just do all the things that they tell you to do. And that's what I did. And I became an agronomist and a salesperson for these companies, and sold a lot of chemical and fertilizer. And in the process, convinced my dad to use a lot more chemicals and fertilizers on our own farm. And so, we became, kind of spokespeople for these big chemical companies until a little bit later on, I started having health issues and second thoughts about what I was actually doing as we started to grow our family, my wife and I. And we realized that, well, maybe these chemicals and fertilizers and way of life, the way that we're switching this farm over to just be really industrial is maybe not so good. So, long story short, I quit that job and we started a natural health and wellness clinic. And I became a holistic nutritionist, a biofeedback technician. And I see a different path now. German New Medicine is one of the main things that took us down that path, and realizing that we were operating so far from nature. And as a result, we were making decisions that weren't based on nature. They were based on what we were thinking, which was all manipulated. And it wasn't in truth and honor to who we are, and what this land is that we had this ability to steward. So we took a totally different path, and that's led us down a whole bunch of exciting opportunities with other people and new friends and new community. And it's fantastic. It's so much more empowering than that path that we were going down before, where I was scared of everything. Like, we eventually switched our farm over to certified organic. So we switched it from being completely conventional, completely dependent on all of the chemicals and all of the fertilizers, and then moving over to certified organic, which means we're not using any of those chemicals and any of those fertilizers. And I was scared shitless. And so was my dad. My dad was, in fact, very much against it at the time because he was so used to these pristine, perfect, beautiful crops,
right.
That he was conditioned to believe, and so was I at the time, that this was a good farmer who could keep his crops really clean and keep that one plant growing without allowing anything else to grow around it. But we were deceived into thinking that was good, and that was something that honored nature in some way, but it didn't. So we through a series of a lot of fear and trauma in making this huge transition, and going through a lot of physical adaptation as a result of that. It made it a lot easier, of course, knowing German new medicine and knowing what to expect biologically. But yeah, now we're at a place where we've moved in beyond organic into regenerative on our own farm. And this is the way that I think of our own practice, like our own clinic, our wellness clinic, is that we're adding in nature. We're offering people something that's more regenerative and in touch with nature, and not just an organic option, to do with their health. So so that's kind of what brought me to where I am today.
When did that start? When did you switch your farm over? And also, when you started adding in more chemicals, what did you see in your farmland? What did you see in your yields? What was that? Did it affect it negatively? Was it positive? What did you see? And what's the difference from what you see in your land now compared to what it was back then?
Yeah, I mean, the chemicals were great, and the fertilizers, they were fantastic. They helped us grow higher yields and abundance, basically, in what we believed was abundance. But that was basically through those eyes that I used to have. That was fantastic because I could get higher yields and all the reps and everything were telling me that this was better. It was healthier, so I thought it was great. But I was then taking that grain that we were harvesting off and then taking it to an elevator, and I didn't know where it was going. And it was going overseas or to whatever, some big industrial mill, or our canola was going into all sorts of different feedstock or ethanol production or some industrial process. And I was so disconnected with what I was actually doing. I wasn't producing food, even though the big chemical companies were telling us that, yeah, we are producing food. It's not food. We were, we thought we were doing a really good thing. And, eventually we weren't making much money. That, there was a problem there because we were spending so much on all the inputs, and we were just too distracted by the color of the paint on the tractors and the brand of fertilizer or chemical that we were using. It was just all sort of a competition. But yeah, and then once we made some of those switches, the first couple of years were really good. In switching over to certified organic, you have to go through a bit of a process. So it's like a 3-year transition without chemicals and fertilizers, whereby when you sell those crops, you can't fetch the certified organic price. You have to sell those crops for the conventional price. And so, we just kind of stopped everything cold turkey and tried to do a few things like increasing our seeding rate to try to outcompete some of the weeds and things like that. And yeah, we noticed a decrease in our yields significantly. So those first few years were a really tough transition. Once we become certified, of course, we could fetch a higher price for our crops. So that was kind of cool because now we basically doubled our price per bushel of our crop, but we're still growing the same crops. I mean, we cut out the GMOs and the canola and things like that, but we're still monocropping, and so we're not really trying to mimic nature in any way. So it wasn't until a few years later when we realized that our yields were even going down further that we had a bigger problem, and that this organic thing wasn't all that it was cracked up to be. So this is where we realized that we're still not appreciating nature because we're still growing monocrops. We're just trying to grow them without these things that actually increase our yield, and the fertilizers actually helped our crops in a lot of ways. So our quality and our yields were going down significantly. So this is where we had to think more holistically. and we had to bring in different practices. And that's what those regenerative practices are that you hear about. And that's where you do less disturbance on the soil. So we're not tilling as much. We are integrating, we're leaving more trash on the soil. So we're not baling up all the straw and the dry matter after we harvest a crop. We're breaking it up and spreading it out over the land to create sort of an armor on the soil, and that protects it from the sun and helps it hold moisture. And then we integrated our animals. So we've always had livestock, and so we put them out on our land now and we rotate them through. Then we also use cover crops now. So something that's growing underneath your primary crop to cover the land up so that after you take your crop off, you still have a living plant in the ground and a living root, and it's not dead. So there's still microbial activity and biological action going on in that soil. So yeah, and then we started integrating multiple species of different crops. And that's where things really took off for us, is realizing that the more we mimic nature, the better she provides, the more she provides for us. So yeah, we started growing like 5, 6, 7, 8 crops together. Well, yeah, you were at our farm tour, so you would have seen, some of those fields. I think that field that we looked at there had like over 15 different species in it. So, and the more species that you grow, the better the yields are and the closer it is to nature. So yeah, the diversity is key. So that was another principle of regenerative agriculture that we brought in. And yeah, now it's great. We're seeing better soil health now, better productivity. The last couple of years have been a little bit of a challenge because it's been so dry. We've had a significant drought, but overall it is better for sure.
Nice. And that diversity is key, even within us, right? Anytime we go to a mono anything, whether it be agriculture, antibiotics killing things and then replenishing with one strong strain of bacteria, like the diversity is so important. And that's because you're not depending on any one thing, right? It's just a great way to weaken everything. So
and I imagine you fared better because with that cover crop, like would you have fared better than your next door neighbor who just has stalks of things and just bare soil? You know what I mean? Like would the ground retain more of the moisture that was available, kind of thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
When you have a whole bunch of different species like that, how do you actually harvest?
Yeah. Okay. So
right? Because you drive a tractor down, blah, 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 it spits things out the side, and it's all the same kind of things. So, I was just curious about the logistics about how that actually works. And
yeah, totally. So that's a good question, because in conventional agriculture, everything is designed to be very simple and efficient. So this is why if you're growing one seed, one type of crop, you can pump the fertilizer, you can customize the fertilizer for that one plant, that one species. And so you can maximize its yield in every possible way. Now in Mother Nature, it's very unpredictable. So that doesn't work for industry if you're trying to maximize the amount of production and money and efficiency, right? So this is why, in conventional agriculture, it's just simple, simple, simple. The simpler, the better.
Yeah.
The more you can have a blanket solution, the better it is for that system. Makes sense. It's a business.
Totally valid.
It's brilliant. Yeah. So in this system, it makes it, there's so many more variables because now let's say you have 4 different crops. So let's say you have peas, oats, barley, and wheat. And I plant them all together. And this is one example of one of the polycrops that we grow because we try to match our polycrops for the feed rations that we make on our farm. So that's basically like our hog, like our swine polyculture feed mix. So The nice thing is though, there's something brilliant that happens in nature when you marry things together at the same time, they sort of sync up. So it's like when people get together in a community, they sort of sync up and they enjoy each other's company and they tend to, yeah, they have fun together. And then at the end of the night, yeah, they're done about the same time. But individually, yeah, maybe one group would party a lot harder than another group, and
Sure. Yeah.
they wouldn't actually finish the night at the same time. But when plants are together, they sort of do the same thing. So some of those crops would normally, when grown individually, would be very different in maturity, but when grown together, they sync up and almost mature at the same time. So it's really beautiful. And when peas, for example, if you grow peas on their own, they have tons of disease, tons of mildew and things like that, and different funguses that basically force that plant to fall down. So peas are quite tall. You probably
Plant
grow
peas.
peas in your garden.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you always usually put a fence up or some sort of trellis for it to grow up, right? And a lot of peas they can grow up to 4, 5, 6 feet tall. But when grown as a monocrop, yeah, they're flat. They're basically flat to the ground.
Mm,
So they don't have any structure to reach the sun, right? To move
right.
towards the sun. So they just fall down and then they rot. And then basically in conventional systems, some areas of the field will still be living and some parts of the field will be dead. And this is why they desiccate. So they'll use something like a glyphosate or a glyphosate with multiple other desiccant chemicals in it to ensure that everything is dead at once. And then they can go in and harvest that whole crop, but they essentially have to pick it up off the ground. But when you grow it with along with cereal crops like wheat, barley, and oats, it actually climbs up the stems of those crops, and then it actually reaches the sun more uniform. And then it matures at the same time, and it's holding it up the whole time so it dries evenly. There's so many good things that happen. Then I can take the combine, well, actually swath it first so that it finishes drying down. So I have a swather, which basically windrows it. It cuts it, brings it into a windrow, and then I let it dry for a week or two. And then we bring the combine through, and I have to manipulate the settings on our combine harvester quite a bit to ensure that I'm not destroying the different sizes of seeds and all that kind of stuff. But we can harvest them all together. And so they all come out in the hopper at the same time. And so now I have a mix of 4 different seeds in my combine hopper at the same time. Meanwhile, I'm chopping all that straw out the back end of the combine and all the weed matter, all that kind of stuff that goes out the back, and I spread that back on the land. And then underneath that crop that I grew, there's always a cover crop, so it's still green. And then, the sunlight is exposed to that crop now because it's not covered by all the ones that we just harvested. And that allows it to grow. And then we put the cattle in there. They have food. Yeah, there's all sorts of good things that happen. But in a conventional system, it's all dead. You
Right.
know, typically it's just dead, and then there's no living root in the soil anymore. So it's not actually, you're not building soil
Yeah.
anymore. So it becomes dependent on some sort of intervention. And that intervention is the fertilizers and the chemicals. So yeah, the further we get away from nature, the more we have to depend on something else to fill that gap.
It's amazing. It's a whole community, like the animals coming in as well. It's a really important part of that cycle and that community. It's very, very cool. And
Yeah.
he says so the glyphosate. Let's just talk about glyphosate quickly here. I think a lot of people are aware of what glyphosate is and what it's used for and the harms, but a lot of people still don't. I'm really quite surprised when I talk to people and I mention the word glyphosate and they don't know what I'm talking about. It's like, oh, okay. So, because I was talking to a man a while ago and he was saying, oh, farmers don't use glyphosate to desiccate. I'm like, excuse me? Pretty sure they do, especially that wheat thing, so let's talk about glyphosate. Why do farmers use it, but what is the fallout after because of the glyphosate that is so ubiquitous in the environment now and in the water cycle and everything?
Yeah. Well, I would say that, well, first I'll say this, that glyphosate is not even close to the most dangerous pesticide that's used in agriculture, like not even close. There are far more damaging pesticides than glyphosate, but glyphosate is just used in such abundance that it becomes an issue. Anything that you use too much of, in nature, it just creates a problem. And so it's used, like it's by far the most used chemical, most sprayed chemical in agriculture over, in the world, for sure. But it's basically like it's a kind of like an antibiotic in a way. So it kills the plant, anything that's actually living. So any plant that's actually living, it kills it, terminates it, and then it's yeah, and then you basically have to start over. So it becomes very functional in the conventional ag system because anything else that's growing is a threat to the crop that you're growing, right? That you want to survive. So you want to be able to kill everything and not have competition for that crop. So yeah, it's super functional in that system, but it does pose a threat because there is some residual, not a lot, but there is some residual. There's, like I said before, there's so many other pesticides where there's way more residual, and it's concerning at a higher level. You've probably heard of atrazine. This is and then some of the neonicotinoids, which are the insecticides. Like these ones are way a bigger issue for sure, but they're just not talked about. So they probably should be talked about more.
Right.
But yeah, glyphosate, we hear that all the time. We hear the name Monsanto, Roundup, all that sort of stuff. Those are quite often trigger words for people who have, heard a lot of bad stuff about it. But,
Yeah.
it's the beautiful thing is about like dead soil can't really break it down too much and too effectively. But living soil that is full, like teeming with biology, can break down anything that's poisonous. So, if the healthier your soil is, the more resilient it is to poisons. So it's different. You can spray Roundup, for example, on, a crop or a soil that has a really high organic matter and lots of biological activity, and you probably wouldn't even be able to detect it the year
Wow.
after that,
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
either in the soil or in the plants that grow from that land. But land that is not healthy in the first place, yeah, you could probably see it for quite some time, and you could probably detect it in the plants for quite some time after. But this is why we have to, create diversity in both our biology in our body as well as in nature around us in our soil.
Right. And so obviously the crop that is surviving is Roundup Ready then when they're spraying it, right, in the conventional farming. It's a Roundup Ready crop that has been altered to withstand the glyphosate, and then everything else dies.
Yes, exactly. So that's a genetically modified plant or a genetically modified crop. So the most common ones are corn, soybeans, and canola in North America. The conventional crops anyway. Those are the big GMO crops. And it's not just they haven't just been bred to withstand glyphosate. A lot of them have been bred to withstand a bunch of other chemicals too. So there's something called Liberty Link canola. So it's designed to withstand a different type of chemistry. So there's a lot of those ones too. But yeah, it's very clever marketing and design by the companies that are doing it. But it does, there's a lot of issues with it in agriculture, partly because of the ownership of the technology and, basically the deception at the food level, for sure. There's a huge problem with biotechnology in my mind, because it deceives nature itself. So it takes us so far away from Mother Nature. And where does that end?
Right, right. Where does that end? So far, we haven't seen where that can end. So, which crops are actually being desiccated intentionally with glyphosate? So we know about wheat. People I always tell people, you want to eat wheat, don't eat conventional wheat that's been desiccated with glyphosate. But what are all the crops that are being desiccated or dried out for people, just so they, for you can explain why they do that and what that is. But which crops do people need to? So we're looking at GMOs, but then we're also looking at the crops that aren't genetically modified, but they're still being applied with that, and of course, clearly other chemicals as well. But this is the one that seems to be the one that's most well known out there. That's chemical.
All of them.
All
So
of them.
yeah.
Oh,
So
interesting. Okay.
yeah, so it used to be. So this is a really good question because agriculture has changed a lot in the past 20 years. So 20 years ago, uh, yeah, 20 years ago, it was pretty rare to have somebody do what we used to call pre-harvest roundup. So that's basically like they would spray it right before harvest to ensure that everything uniformly dries down and it controls any perennial weeds that exist in that field at that time. So typically they'd be things like dandelions, quackgrass, or Canada thistle. And so when I used to work with them, we used to promote the heck out of that for like a fall harvest roundup for weed control. And the fact that it allowed you to dry down your crop and have it uniform to go in there to straight cut harvest it was like a bonus. So yeah, it was the way that we were trained to market and sell that stuff. So it was very clever. And super efficient. Like it allowed farmers to get way more efficient because if they started spraying like a whole field, a whole quarter section or multiple quarter sections, when it came time to harvest, they could literally go into one field and finish up there and go into the next field and start combining. They didn't have to wait for Mother Nature to dry things down. They just
Right.
forced it to dry down.
Right.
And they had this benefit of having no weeds in their field the next year or less weeds in the field the next year. So it was great. But at that time, it was sort of rare. It wasn't really used uniformly across all crops, but now it is. So not only the genetically modified crops, but also all of the conventional crops. So you've got your oats, your barley, your wheat, your peas, the canola, all the major crops in Western Canada get sprayed now. Now, I don't know the exact percentage, but it would be north of 80%.
Wow.
So, yeah. So it used to be that you were pretty safe, like getting wheat flour from the store that wasn't organic. You're pretty safe saying, oh, yeah, it's not sprayed with Roundup because, very little was. But now it is. You cannot get a wheat flour that is not organic that has not been sprayed with glyphosate.
Wow.
It doesn't exist anymore.
Wow.
So any of the non-organic rolled oats, for example, your quick oats or your beer, right? Barley.
Beer, that's a big one for people that aren't even considering these things, right? That's
Totally.
yeah.
And beer's awesome. Yeah. So so it's none of the crops are exempt from this now. It's such a big business. So it gets applied to a lot of acres now. So yeah. So it
That is
kind of
amazing.
switched. It used to be farmers used to get the benefit, the bonus benefit of the uniform harvest, but now that's the main reason that they use glyphosate in the fall now, prior to harvest, is to increase the efficiency of at harvest time. And the crazy thing now that it's not just one type of chemistry anymore. So it's not just glyphosate that they're putting on it. There are multiple different configurations of several types of pesticides that are put into that at fall. Yeah, so it's not just glyphosate anymore.
It's just
Wow.
it's just warfare farming. It's just we have such a warfare mentality against the bugs and the viruses out there, quote unquote, and within our bodies. And it's just such a combative way rather than what you're doing with regeneration and with nature as a partner in nature rather than against, it's just
Yeah, 100%.
so, and it's that analogy is applied to so many different things that we do in our life, whether it be our health or even our moods, our farming, or everything. It's just such a combative way of living.
It is, but it's, yeah, to me, it's just a disconnection from nature. So a lot of farmers, like, it's not like they think about that,
No.
and I didn't think about it at all either. When we were doing that, it was a disconnect. Farming, like our business was just the farming business. And it was just about bushels per acre and the dollars per bushel we could garner from that. So it was just a business. And I think that's the way that a lot of farmers operate it as a business. And they try to disassociate it to health. The deception is really in this idea that farmers actually make food because most farmers don't, right? It's not food. Farmers are actually, they produce industrial commodities,
Commodities.
not
Right?
food. Yeah. So farmers, like natural farmers, grow food. So gardeners grow food, uh, not farmers. That's a important to distinguish the difference between different types of farmers these days, because
Right.
it used to be, if you go back 50 or 100 years, that, yeah, farmers did grow food. That was where it came from. But now the definition has changed. There's different types of farmers now. There's food farmers, and then there's industrial commodity producers. So
So you make
in those
plastic bags and stuff.
industrial, yeah, those I heard somebody call them commodity cowboys one time. So that's that's sort of what most farmers are now. They're just making commodities. So they
That's a really interesting
unfortunately,
point.
yeah, it exploits the land and nature and displaces this ability to create abundance close around us. But the beautiful thing is that when, in a short period of time, that land will be able to do all of those things again. It's just because the land has been farmed in a way that, takes away soil organic matter and poisons it a bit and things like that. Mother Nature heals it. When you
And,
take away those systems and you offer her, those regenerative practices again,
and
and it
so
happens.
how long would you say that it took for your soils to heal? And which leads me to another, what's really cool about this conversation is you're somebody who went from here to over there, right? Like you started on conventional and you are now at the other end, right? And I've heard this thing about one of the reasons why people, I think it was Zach Bush was telling about this. Like one of the reasons why people don't necessarily, well, they probably won't go from conventional across the ways because of those intermediate years. You need enough, basically you
Yeah.
need enough money to survive those couple few years for the
To
soil
let it
to
rest.
let it rest and then regenerate.
Yeah, and so how, with all your learning, I know you probably took longer than what the earth could probably be capable of doing in a shorter amount of time to regenerate. So what is that time realistically for people that might be toying with this idea? If there's a farmer out there who wants to change it up and work with nature rather than against.
Yeah, well, it doesn't take long at all, actually.
Oh,
There are a lot of conventional farmers now that are implementing regenerative practices. So it's really exciting to see it. In the US, it's
Mm.
happening, at scale.
Ooh.
So you have a lot of these conventional farmers that are starting to, apply regenerative practices like cover cropping. So, they're changing their pesticide usage and those sort of bad habits into better ones. They're still using some fertilizer and still some chemicals and stuff, but they're using far less. But even with the conventional system, just slightly modified, they're able to improve their soil in just a couple years significantly. Um, our issue, the reason it took us so long is because we didn't apply the regenerative practices at first. So we just simply stopped using chemicals and
Oh,
fertilizers.
okay. Yeah, yeah.
So it took us quite some time to notice a difference in our soil and productivity and all that. But yeah, you can do it in just a couple of years, just by adding in some of these things, leaving more trash on the soil, planting a cover crop, keeping that green living root in the soil as long as possible. So, you don't have to stop using chemicals per se. You can just start using less of them, and anything is an improvement.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so do you supplement your fields like at all anymore? Or is it all
Yeah,
just
we do.
okay?
Yeah, we use like compost teas
Okay.
and worm casting extracts. So we make like an organic liquid fertilizer out of a bunch of different products that we make on the farm. And then we apply that either through a sprayer or through our seed drill. We have like a liquid fertilizer kit on our seed drill. And so we'll put that liquid in there and dribble it on as we seed. So, yep, we still use additives to help. Basically, we're just giving biology to the
Yeah,
soil
but
to
it's just
activate it, just like, yeah,
biological additives, right?
Yeah. Well, and
exactly.
that's the interesting thing from my understanding with organic, or certified organic, it tells you it requires nothing but being a steward of the land. It's basically you can use this, but you can't use that, right? From my understanding, you can't, it's not about regenerating, it's not being a steward of the land, which is what you are doing to ensure future generations still get to farm on that same land. The way we're going now, that's not going to be the case. So,
True. Yeah, you're right. But the thing that it does do that's good is it stops people from using the industrial pesticides
yeah.
and chemical fertilizers. So that part is significant because now we're at the point where if you don't, like for example, when like we talked about earlier, if you're buying flour or breakfast cereal or crackers and it's not certified organic, then you can guarantee that it has a significant amount of pesticides in it. Um, yeah, you can guarantee it. So it used to be that that wasn't the case, but now it is. So at least if you're buying organic grains, like all your products that have grains in them, then they're not sprayed. Sure, it's not that the farming practices are perfect, but it's a significant improvement.
Right.
So
Fair.
so that is one good thing.
Yeah.
And even the organic groups all over North America and all over the world now, they are recognizing the importance and the significance of regenerative practices. So there's actually regenerative certifications now that you can get, lots of different things. So they're starting to marry this stuff together a little bit,
Mm.
and I think it's really helpful.
Right.
There's more awareness of this now in agriculture than ever before.
That's amazing.
And slowly it will happen. Like yeah, everything sort of, the pendulum swings. It goes from one side to the other side. And we will go through these transitions and changes, and farmers will find better, more efficient ways. Right now, farmers aren't making any money. Conventional farmers are not making money right now. There's just basically there's subsidies and they're, if they consider that making money, sure. But at the end of the day, it's not very profitable. So they're spending all their money on, fancy iron, chemicals, fertilizers, and all sorts of inputs that are making the chemical and fertilizer companies rich, but it's not making the farmer rich.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and it's not very, I don't know, it's not very satisfying to the soul because, that's how I sort of felt when we were farming like that. I just felt like we had the health food store going, and I was like, man, I'm not serving my neighbors. I'm not like, I have the ability to steward this land, but it's not helping anybody here. It's getting shipped over to India.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Crazy.
well, one of the things that, we're talking about awareness, transitions and changes. From the consumer perspective, this has happened too. Like I saw this photograph, and it was two labels. It was the label of Heinz ketchup from like 1980 or something like that. And then the label for the new Heinz ketchup of the ingredients. And even Heinz ketchup used to be tomatoes, some sugar, some spices, and
Vinegar.
right, and some vinegar, right?
Yeah.
And now it's like this laundry list of chemical composition. And so people will often say, well, I grew up on Heinz ketchup or whatever.
But it's not the same. The
it's not the same.
conventional food is not the same. You can't even compare. Like even
Kraft dinner.
all of that sugar. He grew up in Kraft dinner. I did not grow up in Kraft dinner. But even like for example, that ingredient sugar is now from genetically modified sugar beets rather than sugar beets. Right? It's just different. It's just different. So we can't even compare the two. I have a question. How do the 5 biological laws of German medicine, now if nobody knows what I'm talking about, refer to, I think it's number 64, my first interview with Tanya Verquin on Germany medicine and 5 biological laws, but do they, and if they do, how do they apply to your world in farming?
Yeah, well, they absolutely do. Those laws apply to everything in nature, every living thing in nature. So that's what gives me sort of confidence in moving forward down this path of regenerative agriculture and validation when I see it actually happening in front of my eyes. So, I know that I'm doing the right thing when I'm seeing things adapt and be healthy. Like, for example, you can grow, like I talked about those peas before. If you grow peas on their own, well, that's not a natural way for a legume to grow in nature at all. So it will always have disease, a significant amount of disease. So that is why all conventional peas are sprayed with fungicides. So because they always have an abundance of fungus on them because they're growing alone. So nature sees, oh, well, there's a trauma here because they're not growing in harmony with nature. So we'll break it down we'll heal this problem with fungus. And the fungus breaks it down so that it becomes the soil a lot faster than if it didn't have the fungus, right? Because it's actually a problem in nature. It shouldn't happen. It's a trauma. So it's like finding a way to heal that scar on the earth that's been torn out. So, but those same peas, when you plant it with oats, barley, and wheat at the same time, it will not get any disease. So it has companions, it has community, so it has nature with it. So it doesn't need to break it down, it doesn't need to heal, it's already healed. It's perfect. So the closer you mimic nature, the less symptoms that you have with nature. The best way to look at it is wild animals. Compare a wild animal to a confined animal on a farm. And the wild animal never has health issues. You never see a wild animal with a cough or a wild animal with gut issues or any of those things. A wild animal never needs a vet, right? So, But you go into a farm where you've confined an animal, it's in a pen, you're forcing it to eat a certain type of food that is not natural. You're scaring it by running it through different chutes and taking it through an auction mart and all these kinds of things, right? So putting it through all sorts of unnatural, traumatizing experiences. Well, of course, it's going to have symptoms. Back when we used to buy animals from the auction mart, yeah, they'd always come home and they would have a cough. And a cough in German medicine is a scare fright. So, but when they go through an auction mart, an unnatural environment, it's unexpected to them. They may have been bashed around by the people working there and stuff, or just whatever, or, being hauled with a cattle liner at night or at an unnatural time of day. Then they show up at your farm. Well, they finally calm down. And once they go into the healing phase, they have a cough because they finally feel safe. Well, from from a Western medicine perspective, well, that's a dysfunction. That's a disease. They call it like shipping fever.
Ah,
And so there's a drug for that and a vaccine for that, right?
of course.
Of course. But really, all they're doing is healing from that traumatic experience. But you'd never see that with a wild animal because they would never put themselves in that situation. They will avoid. That's why they have that autonomic nervous system. They will fight or be in the fight or flight. They'll run away from a situation that puts them in danger. But a confined animal can't. He's penned up and forced to do whatever his owner wants him to do.
Right.
But yeah, just it's made a huge difference for us because now, I guess the biggest thing is that we're never scared. We're never fearful that there's some sort of contagion, for example,
Of course,
or
yeah.
some disease that we couldn't handle. When we used to have issues with the calves getting something called scours, which is basically like diarrhea. We would get all scared and we were told by the vets that it's in the soil and, it's going to infect our animals and all that sort of stuff. But, now we know better now. We know we're never scared of it anymore. So it's never a problem. So we don't use needles and things like that in medicines with our animals at all. None of them get an injection. None of them get that Western medical treatment at all.
So you must still see symptoms every once in a while. There has to be unexpected events still happening to an animal in nature. Like say, for example, predator has gone after them or something like that. So that would be something they would actually have to heal from. So I'm just wondering, do you see symptoms in your animal, in your livestock? And do you ever intervene in it? Are you applying anything? Or do you just let them go through the process? Or because say, for example, an animal has diarrhea, well, I would think dehydration would be a concern, just like it would be for a human if we have excess of diarrhea. So are you intervening in any way, naturally, somehow?
Yep. Yeah. So diarrhea is a morsel conflict. So it's usually what they're actually eating or what the mother is eating. So, like, for example, if you're changing their diet at the time of that they have a calf, then yeah, that's going to affect the calf, definitely. But yes, absolutely, we intervene because it does happen. We have different symptoms. You could think of foot rot is one of them. Basically, it's like they're stepping on something that they don't want to step on. So they end up having like an infection and swelling in their hoof. And so when in a situation like that, we take them out of the environment that they're in and we put them in a different pen with a different type of soil that they can step on, something more comfortable to step on. If when we move animals from one pasture to the other, and like in our stock trailer, for example, where they're going through some stress and we have to handle them, then we always do that in the mornings. So we don't do it in the afternoon, so that when they actually come to the new pasture, they have time to do a perimeter walk so that they know they're safe. Cattle will always do this. And if you do it at night, you can run into trauma. So you can traumatize an animal if you're moving them at night. because they don't have time for their perimeter walk to feel safe.
Interesting.
So those are things that we do.
Oh,
We
fascinating.
make sure that, and it's low stress handling. So we don't beat them up as they're going up the chutes and all that kind of stuff. We try to keep it as calm as possible as to not traumatize the animal. And then we use things like homeopathics and Bach flower essences with
Oh,
our
yeah.
animals.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great. So we always put that in the water tank wherever we're moving a herd of animals. So we put that in there. So the first drink of water that they're getting, they're actually calming down their nervous system.
I love it.
So there's a whole bunch of things that you can do if you try to mimic nature. If you observe in nature when animals move, they're not moving at night. They're moving during the
Not the
day, so they
cows.
know
Yeah.
where they are. So
Yeah.
all we have to do is sort of mimic that behavior on a farm, and then you minimize the amount of adaptation that has to happen biologically. So yeah, it just works better.
That's so fun. That's very cool.
Very-
So insightful and such a simple thing and low cost, right? It's not like the Bach flower remedies are going to run you what, your bill would be from the vet or anything like that. It's such a simple, and it's just observing. And I think that's what we've really lost the capacity to do in our modern life with all the gadgets and the know-how that we think we have, is we've lost the skill of observation.
Totally. Like if you look at what a wild animal will do, there's more diversity of plant access to a wild animal than a confined one, right? So for their feed. So, a wild animal is going to forage on what it desires at that time of year and what it needs at that time of year. And it is nature. So it actually knows. But a confined animal is forced to eat certain things. Like a deer, for example, or a bird will access absinthe wormwood in the fall, to manage parasites and gut health and all of that kind of stuff. And it's only in native pastures. So it's very effective for the gut and for parasites and things like that. But does anybody feed that to their conventional herd? Nope. It's considered in Alberta a noxious weed, right? So people avoid it because they're actually afraid of it. So they take it out of their pastures or they spray it out of their pastures.
Right.
So, but really, that's kind of what we need at that time of year.
Right.
So what we do for our chickens, for example, is we harvest absinthe wormwood from our native pastures, and then we put it in our chicken feed. So for the chickens, they actually get access to absinthe wormwood to manage their parasites instead of having to use some sort of, something from the vet.
Right. Oh, that's so fun. And I'm very happy to say that our eggs that we get are fed, the chickens are fed with the feed formulated by you. So
Awesome.
I think we get probably the best quality eggs in the province, I'm pretty sure, and anybody else who's getting your feed, because there's so much
Yep.
consciousness. It's not even just what's in there, it's the whole philosophy that goes in behind that, it's just
No, you're so right. Yeah. The feed industry it's crazy. It's another industry, right? The feed industry, it's consolidated just like most things in agriculture. Eventually, the ones who control different sectors of agriculture just buy everything up. And in Canada now, there's basically just a few big players in the feed manufacturing industry, and they just try to make things as efficient as possible. So they buy monocrops and use genetically modified feed or crops to make food for livestock. And so, yeah, if you're buying livestock feed from any of the stores that are the feed stores in anywhere in Canada, you're getting genetically modified feed. Most of them will use soy meal or canola meal for the protein source. Those are all genetically modified. So merely buying that feed for your animals is supporting industrial agriculture.
Mhm.
So we are what our food eats,
Totally.
Right.
sort of thing, right? We support what
Totally.
our food eats.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're gonna eat an animal, basically, if you're buying an animal that's conventionally raised, well, that's what you're supporting. That's the type of agriculture that you're supporting. So yeah, we needed something different in the feed industry. It used to be that we didn't because there wasn't any 25 years ago, there basically wasn't any genetically modified crops in Canada. So they weren't using canola and soy meal for the protein source in feed. And now that's basically all they use.
And there's at the consumer level, there's such a huge impact that we can have ourselves. We count on you, the farmers, to do the right thing, but the choices that we make on the consumer level, that has such a huge ripple effect into how we can affect the change that we actually want to see. Who are we
Yep.
supporting? What are we
Mhm.
buying? Well, like that. There's
That's
so
where the real
much.
voting happens.
That's true. It's absolutely where and there's so many changes that can be affected through just making a different choice in how you purchase. So if people want to purchase products grown, raised by you, where are they finding them? These local people to Alberta, anyways.
Yeah, basically on our website, or getting a hold of us directly. We try not to advertise a lot of different things because we operate a private membership group. So that's where we're trying to stay out of the public, and we're operating privately as much as possible because yeah, I feel that's part of the issue is that it's just so regulated and controlled. And we went through a situation, in making some livestock feed a few years back where, yeah, they wanted to come onto our farm and stop us from making livestock feed. But at the time, we were promoting it online to the public.
Aha.
And once we realized that, we quickly made some changes and moved it into a private membership model. And now we have, private contracts with the individuals that we work with, and it works so much better, and it's harmonious, and we don't have fear now of, being subject to all of those regulations in the public realm. So yeah, works
Okay,
way
and
better.
that I think is a fantastic segue into the upcoming conference that's coming up at the end of the month because Tim is going to be one of the speakers there speaking on just that topic, being a part of or creating your own private member association, which is such an important thing, I think, in these times, specifically going forward to really create or to have access to what you want. So tell us about the conference that you have coming up. What was the impetus for that? And is this the first one you've put on? It's the first one I've heard about. So tell us about what people can expect coming to this conference. By the way, if you want it again, Atlassian 30, we'll have it in the notes and maybe I'll have it streaming on the video format of this video if you want to get $30 off. But tell us about the Basic Human Needs Conference coming up.
Okay. So first of all, yes, we're stoked about having you there, Tim. This is great. And yeah,
Fantastic. Me too.
yeah, you too, Sasha. Like this is it's gonna be fun. Just the community that's gonna be there is fantastic. Now, I guess this event, the Basic Human Needs Conference, the idea was started several years ago. Our wellness clinic, we used to have these events called food security meetings. And so what we did is we brought farmers in that did things differently, more regenerative and more organic, and that were selling directly to consumers, just because we felt that there was a need for this. In the wellness center, it's all about connecting to your food sources to increase your confidence and understanding of who you are. And the closer you are to nature, the more confidence and understanding and safety that you have. So that's what that was all about. We used to do small events, like 30, 40 people, but there was more interest all the time. So a few years back, we did a series of events. That one winter, they were called Meet the Farmer. And I think we did a couple in the Olds area, two or three, and then we did a big one in Calgary. And I don't know if you guys were at that one, but
You didn't make
Uh,
it. No,
yeah,
plain.
same
No.
idea though. We brought farmers in, and it was really just to highlight the farmers so that people knew who they were and they could connect with them directly instead of using this grocery store model
Right.
where there's a middleman and you're so disconnected from your food, you were getting closer to your food. And so, yeah, it was quite successful. And this year, we teamed up. So we run the Weston A Price chapter out of Central Alberta, out of Olds. And there's a new chapter, a couple that manages the chapter in Calgary. And Mike and Eve are their names. And they have a company called Green Sheep, or The Green Sheep. And so we knew them from before and they're fantastic. So we got together and we said, well, let's make it a bigger event. There's so much interest, let's do it. So yeah, we're working together and we called this event the Basic Human Needs Conference. It's going to be in Didsbury. The purpose is to bring people closer to their food source, um, and connect with the farmers that are actually growing real food. So these aren't conventional farmers that we're highlighting in here. We're hoping that a whole bunch of conventional farmers come
Yes, please.
and and get access to food just like everybody else. But yeah, it's the morning of the event. It's on the 28th of March of this month, at the Didsbury Zion Church, and it's a beautiful venue. It's big. It's got lots of different rooms. Holds about, well, a little over 400 people. In the morning, we'll be highlighting all these farmers. They'll get up and talk for 15 to 20 minutes, tell you about their farm and why they're doing what they're doing, what they produce, and how you can purchase from them. Um, then in the afternoon is getting into a whole bunch of other aspects of our basic human needs. So it's talking about who we are, right, Tim? Uh, why private contracts are beneficial in today's society. What money really is. So, how we can be a little bit more independent and decentralized when it comes to um, offering value for something. What to use. How does Bitcoin fit into this? How does gold and silver fit into this? Or should we just keep on using fiat currency or a combination of them? Um, we have homesteaders coming. We have foragers. We got Malcolm Sanders
Oh
from the
yeah,
Light
Malcolm.
Cellar.
Okay.
He's going to talk about foraging and just all of these things help people be a little bit more independent so they can look after their sort of basic human needs a little more comfortably. And yeah, it's going to be a great event. Our keynote speaker we're really stoked about, Dakota Cohen. He's lots of people have heard of him. He's
Yeah.
fantastic, super dynamic speaker. He's going to bring it all together and talk about how we can feed the world with regenerative farming and how we've been sort of led to believe that conventional farming is feeding the world, which it is not.
Right.
So it's going to be a really great talk, and I think it'll, yeah, just bring community together and make everybody, feel a part of that community. It's a challenge with this age of distraction that we live in today. People
Right.
are so disconnected with nature, and they're actually traumatized because they don't have security. That's one of those basic human needs, this idea of security. And when that's threatened, that's when we have trauma. And that's why we have symptoms, is because, those things are threatened. So uh, if you get closer to nature and your food source, you experience less trauma in your life. So that's what we're trying to do is improve people's confidence and in how they navigate this beautiful life that we get to experience.
Right. And I think that's important. So for you guys who, if you want to know about Dakota, I've also interviewed him on the podcast. I do not remember
Right.
which episode. It's a much earlier episode, but he is on this podcast. We had the pleasure of going to his farm 2 years ago now. think maybe 2 years ago, I think, and saw how his system works. Very, very, very cool. But I think that's a really important point there is getting closer to food source and understanding that because people have been sold the story of scarcity. Being sold a story of scarcity, that there's not enough to feed the world, that we are going to be saved by big business, that there's, your sicknesses are going to be fixed by us, your food is going to be because we just don't have enough. But we know we've never even tried to tread softly in this one to work together with it and to regenerate it for the future generations. So people have bought into the fear and they are driven by fear. We make poor choices when we're afraid. So I think this is a really amazing conference. Guys, if you're listening to this, you're in the area, you want to take part in this, this is going to be a fabulous opportunity to gain some of that confidence and to meet the people that are creating these changes and they're putting the effort in, because we're not all going to be farmers, but we all need to know our farmers, I think. I think it's pretty important to get to know your farmers, to understand what they're doing and their ethics and values and how you can share that and how you could do a little bit even on your own little property that you do have if you want to just have a little garden or grow something. It does lead to a lot of confidence because people are afraid. They're afraid of not having enough and not having those basic needs met. So
That's what I really
Yeah.
felt from Rick there when he's talking about the fear. There's no fear. Like when you're talking about the 5 biological laws of German new medicine and applying it to farming, it's just like, we don't freak out. And
Yeah.
that's like I can sense that in you, right? You have this really peaceful, way about you. And it's like
solid,
it's
right? He's solid.
but that absence of fear, right, is such a
Yep.
beautiful place to sit. And I don't think many people actually experience that. So when it comes to basic human needs, like what are the kinds of things that you could do that could help you absolve yourself of these like little anxious, panicky things that are keeping you from,
Yep.
really.
The world is sort of commerce runs on fear. So, all the biggest industries in the world use fear-based marketing and to build their business. In the pharmaceutical and the chemical industries, that was one of the first things that we were taught is, how to scare your customers so that they're more
Wow.
likely to purchase your products. So that's what insurance does. That's what pharmaceutical industry does. That's what the chemical industry does, what the fertilizer, like all of
Marketing.
them. They
That's what this
use,
book I mentioned today
Yeah,
it's
it's
all about
marketing.
that's like
It's
scarcity is a big part of marketing, right?
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then yeah, it comes down to the basic human needs. And scarcity is one of those things because we need air, food, water, shelter, sleep, and if there's scarcity of any of those one things, then we're actually operating in our sympathetic nervous system and making irrational, hip pocket decisions. And they're not going to be for the good of your future. Those are manipulated tools that are there for you to choose.
Right.
So you're going to buy the thing that isn't good for you.
Right. Exactly.
That's just what they do. That grocery stores use that method all the time. But yeah, so it's going to be exciting. Now, sure, agriculture is one thing, but human health is this other thing, and this is where Tanya Verquin, like she's going to be there, and she's going to do a talk on G&M. Super stoked about that because the more people that know the first biological law, this understanding that nothing in nature is screwed up and everything is biologically purposeful, this is what truly changes the game for everybody. When you're thinking about all this, pharmaceutical health fiasco, this deception over the past 5 years, right, that we've experienced, we get into understanding that, what is really going on and how clear it is that they're just using fear as a tactic to sell you some more poison and, which leads to selling more and more and more.
Exactly. It's a great business model for their side. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great, but it exploits our ability to enjoy life.
Well,
And
yeah,
this
and
is
that's why I love that you're applying German medicine to your whole world, to your state of being, because we usually learn about it from the personal health perspective, right? In our personal
yeah,
symptoms, which I try to just give a little bit of a nudge to people all the time because, again, it takes away the fear. It's like, okay, when you have a symptom, let's get curious. What did you just resolve? What is your body doing? What's the biological purpose for that? How do we support that and get curious about it rather than get afraid and suppress the very healing that your body is going through in the moment? Because we live in this, we suppress the weeds, we suppress the mood, we suppress the pain, we suppress the tumor, like we suppress everything, right?
we should,
Rather than recognizing it for what it truly is.
yeah, we suppress it just out of fear. Yep. Yep. It's because we've been taught that it's a dysfunction and that we need to be afraid of it. But yeah, when you learn about that and you're never afraid of those things and you actually embrace it and you're excited when you're symptomatic, because it now it's yeah, so it's
Right.
kind of a riddle and it's more of a celebration. And you can stay out of that sympathetic state. So you can resolve conflicts a lot faster when you're thinking using your rational mind instead of the irrational fight or flight state.
Right.
Yeah,
Excellent.
it's very difficult if you're already conflict active and you're already symptomatic. Um, to actually figure something out. So you're better off figuring it out and learning German new medicine when you're not symptomatic.
Right.
Uh, yeah, so that when it happens, and it always happens, nobody, you know, doesn't experience symptoms in their life or even every day or every week. Like everyone does. You just have to pick up on it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's
absolutely.
exciting. So yeah, Tanya's coming as well. There will be a lot of really good speakers at the event. I think it's a one of a kind. There's not a lot of events like this, especially that highlight farmers and direct sources of food from people who are actually doing things in a way that honors Mother Nature. So there's a unique lineup of farmers, and there's actually quite a few of them. I think there's probably going to be over a dozen regenerative farmers there or more in the local area. A lot of them will be speaking. A lot of them will just be around. They'll have name tags, and you'll be able to talk with them. Everybody will have a worksheet there, which we're encouraging everybody to to identify their primary food sources for the entire year at the event. Now,
Ah,
yeah, so that you have security knowing that your basic human needs are met. So there's a worksheet that has a place to write down your egg sources, for example. So there'll be like you can write two or three different farmers who produce high quality eggs because everybody needs eggs. And then to write your pork and your beef and your chicken and all of that sort of stuff so that you can actually talk to that farmer, shake his hand, and say, buddy, you're my guy. Let's book it in. And what this does is it helps that farmer plan for the year. This is the perfect timing because it's right
Beautiful.
prior to the production season. The
Yeah.
last thing we need is for a farmer to just speculate on what he can actually sell during the year. And, everybody's so distracted, they're not going to follow up with it. Most
right,
people don't, right?
right.
It's great that I met a farmer, but then their conditioning takes over and they go to the grocery store the very next day and they buy their eggs from the grocery store because that's what they're conditioned to do. So if you start new to reprogram that and the way that you think about food and how you access food, and you actually have the numbers and the face and the feeling of the touch of their hand, we're that much closer to our food source, which increases our sense of security that much more. And it creates a whole new behavior, which is what we need. Because it's the old behaviors that lead to the state that we're in with society. It's the conditioned behavior. So we got to recondition that. It's just like the new perspective in German new medicine. You have to look at things differently and do things differently. So that's what this is all about. There is a website where it's like a farmer directory that we've started, and it's called foodgenie.com.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a place where only farmers that meet certain criteria can list their farm. And then you can, go on there and find out like who grows this and who produces that, and then you can connect directly with them. But yeah, the goal is to help people be able to source food directly, which is always cheaper that way because you don't have to go through a middleman like a grocery store, which takes all the profit from farmers. And then you get closer to that source. Yeah. And these days, you got
Beautiful.
to be able to ask the questions about how food is produced.
Yes.
Because it used to be, we didn't have to, because
Yeah.
we knew it was done using healthy methods and without biotechnology. And now, yeah, almost all of it is done using biotechnology.
And even I think sometimes people have a false sense of security going to their local farmers markets, which I think, a lot of the farmers are going to go to, but that's not a guarantee anymore. It's not a guarantee, especially these big box farmers markets these days where you get all sorts of vendors there. It's not a guarantee. You have to be willing to ask the questions and having the conversation. And a lot of times you can tell the answers, sometimes they're very nebulous. They don't really give you, but somebody's doing it right. He's going to give you the details. They're going to let you know exactly what they're doing because they know they're doing it right and the best that they can do.
You bet. A lot of farmers markets are just resellers, right? They're just
Yes.
a glorified grocery store at a
Yes.
small
It
scale.
really is.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're right. At the event, we're going to give to everybody also the top 10 questions to ask any farmer about food.
Oh, nice.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, everybody will get that because you have to know what to ask them. Like for example, what they feed their animals.
Yes.
That's how many people ask, they buy it from the grocery store. And if you're buying an animal product from the grocery store, there's no way of telling what the animal was fed.
Yeah.
But you can pretty much guarantee that it was fed genetically modified food because that is what the conventional system does.
Yes.
Yeah. So if it's in a grocery store, it has to be mass produced. They're not going to buy something from a small potatoes producer, right? So, yeah.
And I think you're also going to are you going to have tables with other local vendors and businesses as well there?
Yes,
for
it is
people to-
also a trade show. Thanks for asking that. Because,
Aha.
yeah, it's a full-on trade show too. So
Oh,
there's going to
great.
be all sorts of different vendors there. I think we already have over 30 booths.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yep, natural health practitioners, wellness centers, all sorts of different modalities. Bunch of farmers are having booths there. Yeah, you name it. It's we're gonna be serving bone broth. We have Kayla from Bone to Broth. She's gonna be bringing bone broth there. We have Happy Belly Kombucha, Victoria. She's gonna be bringing kombucha and serving it. We are also kind of following that whole traditional theme of the Weston A Price Foundation, and we're doing a potluck. So everybody's encouraged to bring a traditional dish. So so it's a huge
I have to
potluck.
mention that part.
Yeah, I haven't heard that part. No.
Guess what? It's a potluck.
Yeah, it's a potluck.
No.
So
Okay.
yeah, and this is the cool thing because when you're doing a big event like this, what are your options for food? Well, guess what? You're hiring a caterer who is going to buy their stuff from one of the big food distributors,
Of course.
and guaranteed everything that goes into that meal is going to be supporting the conventional system. So when we were designing this, we're like, well, how the heck do we, do it differently? So yeah, best way is to ask everybody to bring a traditional dish, and we encourage people to, use food from local farmers as much as possible. So that's how we're doing food.
This
Yeah.
is a really unique event, Rick.
Totally.
Like, kudos to you. That's really
Absolutely.
cool. I'm really looking forward to this. This is going to be super fun on a
Yeah.
lot of levels. I'm tearing up.
Yeah.
It'll be
You're
good.
just thinking about working at my booth.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm really
It's very touching.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
It
good.
is. This kind of stuff really touches my heart. It's important.
Yeah.
And I don't, and
Well,
it's, oh, why do I do this? I always end up crying well, not always, but sometimes. But it's just fundamental. Like this is fundamental to us moving forward, healing humanity and the earth. Like it's just, these are fundamental things that need to happen. We need to come together. We need to pay attention to what we're doing. We need to pay attention to what we're putting in our bodies and how we're growing things and knowing how it all works. Like there's so many different aspects combined here, which is just it's really
mhm.
amazing.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's just about building community. Because community gives you safety. It addresses all the basic human needs. So it's you have joy and fun and happiness and all of those things that come out of community. And the easiest way to do it is to build it around food, because we all need that as a fundamental physiological human need. But if the food source is, a deceptive source, then it's not true to nature. So we have to start with the food. It's something that we do pretty much every day. We eat food. So if that foundation is tainted, then our entire life is tainted. So we have to start there. And when you go back to the traditional ways of eating and living, that's why I enjoy the Weston A. Price Foundation. If anybody wants to
Mm.
dive into that a little bit, Weston A. Price was a dentist, and he did one of the biggest nutrition studies in history. I think it might still be the biggest nutrition study that was ever done. But he went all over the world studying like indigenous peoples. And what he noticed was that, these groups of people were isolated. These were isolated groups. They were living as a community, and there were no health issues, and none of them. These were healthy groups of people with no health issues. But the one thing that they had in common is that they were all isolated communities.
Mm.
So isolated communities have less distractions. They have less trauma. As soon as you start, like swiping on the supercomputer that we have that we call cell phones, then all of a sudden we are deceived. And our mind then is easily manipulated into believing something of fiction rather than truth. But if you can keep yourself in a community and not distracted, then you can live more authentically and be living your truth more and be eating the right food and having the confidence and all of those things. And this is why, this one world sort of centralization idea, this one world government, the fiat currency that controls all, this is the opposite direction. This is the way to control humanity and not to free humanity. So if we move back to, yeah, very, um, you know, I, I don't know, smaller communities, smaller governments, smaller everything, so that we know what's actually happening around us, then we're exposed to less trauma. And it's just better for everybody.
Totally.
There is really nothing centralized in nature, is there?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Right?
Yep, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's always it's community. In nature, you look at animals, you look at different regions, you look at different species, and they're different when you go to a different area or different part of the world. There's different species, there are different communities.
Yeah.
So yeah, they don't interact together.
Right. They're not immigrating all over the place. Ah, that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And when people get so confused about nutrition, that's one thing that I always send them to. So go to the Weston Price Foundation. Let's go back to some basics, right? Just go back to basic food prep, basic nutrition, real whole food, that what we used to do back in the day. Because it's just it's not dogma. It's not,
Yep.
it's just,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's crazy that it like that organization exists, because it's such a good resource for people. And you can just access it online, and they're based out of the US, but there's chapters in lots of different parts of the world. And
Yeah.
it's been really fun being a chapter leader for them and connecting people. One of my jobs as a chapter leader is to connect people with farmers that are doing things right,
Mm.
that are
So
that
cool.
aren't using the chemicals and fertilizers, and providing food to their communities. So it's all about creating communities around food. So that's why we teamed up with the group out of Calgary. And so it's a great resource for anybody around you guys. They're fantastic. If you look on the Health Street website, you can see a bunch of the speakers that are talking at the event, and Mike and Eve are going to be speaking, and Eve is going to be emceeing. It'll be a great event.
Nice. Okay. And so for people, one last time for people to sign up, first of all, use your Atlassian discount code so you get $30 off. And where do they go to sign up again specifically?
To the Health Street website. So it's healthstreet.ca.
Okay.
And if you just scroll down on that homepage, you'll see the Basic Human Needs Conference, and there's like a registration button or a learn more button. And yeah, you can scroll through there, and yeah, there's a little section at the bottom of the registration page where you can put in that discount code. And that discount code is valid until the 20th, the 20th of March.
Right.
Yeah, after that, there's no more access to discounts. So then it's $130, but yeah, you can save $30. So $100 for like a full day of like rock solid confidence building, independent building information. So it should be really good. We're really looking forward to it. It's already over half full. Actually more
Nice.
than, yeah, quite a bit more than that. So
That's
there's going to be a
awesome.
ton of people there. It'd be awesome.
That's gonna be
Yeah.
great. That's gonna be a great place to connect. That's gonna be so much fun. Okay, Rick. Well, I don't know. Is there anything else? I think
I
that
don't think
was
so.
great.
We got
You
to be
touched on so many
he
different things.
needs to be 20 minutes away
Yeah,
and
no, he's got a little. Oh yeah, you do. You got to go. Okay,
right.
good. Well, we're about at our hour and a half mark. So that was amazing, Rick. Thank you for doing all that you're doing. It's great to finally get to connect like this. I'm going to work hard to get this out as soon as possible so people can take advantage of this and learn about it. And I look forward to seeing maybe some of you podcast listeners out there at the conference. That would be super fun to meet some people that are actually local to this part of the world anyways. Any
Yeah.
last words do you have for us?
Well, I just want to thank you guys for doing what you do and creating a platform for people to learn this kind of information. It's super valuable, and I hope it gets shared far and wide. So thank you very much.
Our pleasure, Rick.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Okay, everybody,
Cool.
share this if you know everybody. Sorry to cut you off.
That's
But
okay.
share this if you know anybody who might be interested in learning just the information today, even if you're not in this local area, but if you are, about the conference, we gotta make an effort to make this to support our farmers and to make the choices. And when somebody goes to the effort to put this kind of event on, I mean, we can only respond by going, right?
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So
I'll say one more thing.
yeah, go.
So you're exactly right. We do have to make the effort. It takes effort to create change.
Yes.
And
Yes, it
what we
does.
notice a lot of times is that like these farmers that are putting in the effort, like seriously, these guys are like, some of them have completely changed their way of life. They ditched their old life from the city to go and be a homesteader and try to make a go of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And like it is amazing what these people are doing. And they need the support in order to make it a go
Yes.
and have it be successful. So you can't the food is priceless that these people are making, but a lot of them they're just not good marketers, right? They just want to farm.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is sort of a platform for them to get some showtime, to be the rock stars that they actually are. But as consumers, we have to support these people, and we have to make an effort to to buy from them and realize that that is going to pay dividends by building their community and their health and resiliency in the future. But yeah, we've seen it time and time again where we have an event like this, and for the first couple weeks, there's lots of interest. The farmers get lots of calls and everything, but then, yeah, a couple months later, crickets.
Yeah.
And we've seen a lot of farmers actually go out of business
Yeah.
simply because they're not getting the support that they need.
Yes.
So hopefully this helps to build that business for the farmers so that they can plan ahead of the growing season so that they can, produce more and make it a better business. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant.
And really,
Well done.
when you're aware and you've got the means to do it, I think it's our duty. I think it's our duty to feed ourselves this way. It just is, because otherwise, like you said, it's just not going to work. They're going to go out of business, and it's really convenient to go to that grocery store just down the corner. But also, I love having my freezer full of all this stuff and having the farmer come and meet him, and there's great satisfaction in that. I love it.
You bet, because that's one of the basic human needs that gives you security.
I get it.
100%.
I get it. Agreed. Okay, Rick.
Fantastic, Rick. Thank you so much. What a great chat.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Okay, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed it. Share and